All because of my attitude. He wanted me hired. He wanted me on his team. So he wasn't going to let anything get in the way.
So let me make sure that nobody misses this. You were selling candy in front of this location. He came out basically to do one thing, which is to tell you that it was a violation of the rules. He could not allow you to continue to do it. But in the course of him communicating with you, he was so impressed with your attitude, your communication ability, and everything about you, your appearance, your demeanor, and everything, that even though he proceeded to tell you you could not continue to sell the candy at his location, he offered you a job. He said, whenever you turn 21, come and see me and I will give you a job. He didn't say come apply for a job and I'll think about it. He said come see me and I will give you a job. He made a promise, right?
Correct.
And it was about 2 years later before you approached him and he wasn't there. You were persistent. You came back and he was the one, before you even told him, you said, do you remember me? He said, yes, I remember you. And then he said, if you're here for the job that I offered you, basically 2 years ago, I'm going to keep my word. If you're here for a job, I'll hire you. And he said that before you even filled out the application, before he really even knew anything about you or what you were going to put on the application, right?
Right.
But one thing he did know, the first time he saw you, the second time, and every other time, is that you were a black man. So black man, that is not the problem. I'm sorry?
This guy was white.
Yeah, I think we made that clear. I think
it could have been something else, but yeah, he was white.
Yeah, he was white as any white man you've ever known, right?
What he said?
And he was just as white as any white man you've ever known or seen, right?
Absolutely.
I have stories like that myself. Because there's always companies that are looking for people, and they're not looking for the people who don't know how to speak, who don't have a good attitude, who blame everyone else for all of their issues, who cannot get along with other people, who cannot assimilate in different environments. And they definitely are not looking for people who don't know how to put a belt around their waist and they walk around with their pants hanging off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, now you left out a part of that story which I think is important too. You were tired of doing the business, but by the time you were 19 or 20, you
21.
had 21. No, right, no, I'm saying before you started the job, the retail job, you had done something. You had taken that business where you were working for someone else and you saw the opportunity to be an entrepreneur and do it yourself and actually hire people. So why don't you talk about that?
Yeah. That time actually, I didn't have anybody working for me at the time. I was actually just doing it myself. I didn't have any employees. It was just me and my candy. I didn't sell anything. I didn't make anything.
Exactly. That's the way business is. But before you got to that point, you went through a phase where you had as many as how many people working for you at the max?
15 and 20.
How many?
15 to 20 people.
So okay, so we can't leave that out because even though that has nothing to do with what I'm trying to do, the point I'm trying to make, I want people, because like I said, it's easy to point fingers and talk about situations, but when you try to give positive insight, input, or advice, people want to know, why should I listen to this person? Do they know what they're talking about? So even though they're listening to me, they're also listening to you because you're my son. And you basically emulate the mindset that I have. Is that not true?
That's correct.
Okay. So even before that happened, when you decided that you wanted to do something different, and a lot of people do that, entrepreneurs do that. I have done it too. I've gone from being an entrepreneur, working for myself and having other people working for me, to being an employee and having a job where I am an employee and working for someone else, even though most of my careers have been in supervision and management, but I'm still working for someone else and not running the company. So that's not uncommon for entrepreneurs to do that. But at the height of your success, you had 15 to 20 people working for you, right?
Correct.
Okay. And I think on one of my videos, I talked about how you pulled up to my house one day in a Lexus and you had car payments of $1,000 a month. Now, you and I, what'd you say? You're laughing. Yeah, you and I agreed that that was dumb. You were flossing a little bit, but the point is you were able to do it, even though that wasn't a good thing to do with your money. You were making enough money to do that, and that's what I want people to hear. Because two points I'm trying to make. Number one is that it is a myth that it's someone else's fault for these black men who just say who are just chronically unemployed, and I don't give a darn where it is or how many of their peers have that same issue. You're black, I'm black, and all the black males I know, and the ones I'm related to. Okay, I was about to mention some names, but you know who I'm talking about. None of them have an issue. I mean, they are chronically employed, whether they're self-employed or employed by someone else, and they cannot co-sign on all of the excuse making that permeates our race. I'm sorry, it's just not a fact. So what we need to talk about, like I said, there's videos I looked at, the title was Let's Talk Solutions, but nobody's talking solutions. That's what I'm trying to do. Solution has to do with, number one, looking in the mirror and asking yourself, what am I doing wrong? Because why are these other black men not having a problem? How come nobody's coming up to me and offering me anything? And I'm going to say this. I don't want to do all the talking, but I'm going to say this. Part of it has to do, you see, you know that Hurricane and I were going to do, well.
What happened? You said, wait, say that again?
I just mentioned, you know that my comedian friend and I were going to put this mentoring program together to help mentor young black males. And one of the primary things we wanted to say to them is that the number one thing you need to do, if anything we tell you is going to help you, the most important thing, at least one of the most important things, and the first thing is look around at your peers, your homies, your homeboys, whatever you call them that you associate with, and ask yourself, are they where you want to be? Or can they help you get where you want to be? If the answer is no, you need to drop them like a bad habit. You really do. I mean, you can be their associate, their homie, their friend, or whatever, but you need to take the amount of time that you spend with them. And I mean, talking to them, hanging out with them, socialize with them, doing whatever you do with them, which for the most part is standing around on a corner doing nothing. You need to cut that down to an absolute minimum, and really you need to cut them off completely. And you can because you're trying to better yourself, you're trying to improve, you're trying to become a new and better and improved person, and that's one of the first things you need to do. And without doing that, it's going to be extremely hard, because you are not only largely a product of your environment, but you have the wherewithal as an adult to create your environment, or at least pick and choose the environment you associate with, no matter where you live. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I told you about the situation when I was living in this one environment where, when we first came to LA, where there was a lot of gang banging, drug dealing, sherm sales, shootouts, and everything else going on a regular basis, because we ended up there before we realized what we were getting into, because it looked like a nice area. But the point of the matter is, I was right in that demographic, that age demographic, same age as them, but I had no problems at all. None. Everybody knew who I was. They just didn't know much about me, other than that I kept to myself. I wasn't like them. I didn't walk like them. I did not talk like them. I did not act like them. I was not a peer. There was no peer pressure, because they didn't see me as a peer, and I didn't see them as a peer, because we weren't peers. We just happened to live in the same area. And I had no problems whatsoever, nor did I feel I need to associate with them to keep from having a problem. That's what cowards do. Do you know that? That's exactly what they do. Because they're not confident enough to basically go solo when they have to. They make these false associations, these weak associations with other people, basically so that somebody can have their back if they had a problem. And they end up dealing with the types of people that don't do anything constructive or positive in their life other than keep them at an extremely low level. And they end up being just like those other people. And I have seen it happen. People who weren't like that, but because they were fearful of the very environment they lived in, and also afraid of their shadow, they started associating with the wrong types of people that they truly did not want to associate with, but they felt they had to out of fear. They had to for personal security and protection, and they ended up becoming just like those people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I never did that. But anyway, like I said, I don't want to do all the talking, and I'm going to let you go. I know you got things to do. You're just getting off work. But I want you to say a little bit more. And now you're working at a different company. from the one where they offered you a job. You went out and got that one, and it didn't take you long to get it, and you're doing very well, right? And you showed me not a write up. What was it? It was a commendation or something that they gave you. The first one.
Yeah.
Right, and it was extremely impressive. I mean, and not only that, they said they let you know before you left that company to change jobs and for better opportunity. They said anytime the door is always open, you can come back. You've got a job waiting for you, right? So how could you possibly have a problem? And I've told you before that it doesn't matter what happens with the economy. It doesn't matter how many people out of work. It doesn't matter what percentage of people out of work. It doesn't matter how many companies close their doors left and right. I told people I am absolutely not worried about, I won't say your name, my son, because no matter what happens, he will never, ever have an insurmountable problem because he will not make excuses. He will handle it because he knows what I know is that even if other people don't hire you, you can always hire yourself, and he knows how to do that because he's done it. Right? Not only that, but because of his personality, his attitude, his demeanor, his communication, and everything else, he can pretty much go any place he wants to go. I don't care how many people say they're not hiring people, and including the ones that say they're not hiring black people. I am 100% confident that he, just like myself, can go to that very same place and get a job if it came down to it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
We all experience rejection. We all experience racism. We all experience people judging us because of the color of our skin. We all have experienced that. There's not a black person in America that has not experienced it, but it is so irrelevant. It is just as irrelevant as the fact that a person may have an interview and not get hired for whatever reason. Who hasn't experienced that? Well, maybe some people have, because if you don't, it's like anything else. If you don't get in the boxing ring, you can say and brag about the fact that you've never been knocked out in the boxing ring, you've never lost a fight in the boxing ring, and you've never not gone the distance in the boxing ring. The reality is you've never even stepped in the boxing ring, so that's not even possible, right? So if you only applied for one job and you got the job, that doesn't count. But the bottom line is, if you're out there in the job market, I've always known that it's just a numbers game. Whether it's the first, the second, the third, or the fourth, I've got to get picked up, and I always have. Always, without exception. And that's what I anticipate happening. That's what I expect. But a lot of these people, the ones I'm trying to address, they feel that because they've been rejected so many times, they have given up. And they will not acknowledge that the problem is themselves. They have given up and convinced themselves because they have so many so-called homeboys and friends that have the same problem, so therefore they don't try anymore. So what they do is they make excuses. They blame the system. They blame, quote, the man. They blame racism. They blame everything else. And because their peers have the same problem they do. Okay, I want you to talk now because the first thing you said, you know I'm a motor mouth. First thing you said was, have you thought about what type of people? And I said I wanted you to be the one to say it. So you tell me, what type of people you think have that chronic problem? You tell me, how would you describe them? What do they have in common?